Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. I mean, I think one thing, why do they have the moral high ground? And this is something is really a core mission of mine to correct, is that as I mentioned before, they really owned the issue of a good environment starting in the 60s, including loving nature, including caring about clean air and clean water, and more recently, caring about safety from climate. And that the pro-capitalism side really didn't concern themselves too much with this rhetorically, at least. And so the anti-capitalist side was able to own this issue. And when you own something as important as our environment and our planet, you do get the moral high ground. And then they supplemented this with this false alternative of you are either a climate change believer who hates fossil fuels, or you are a climate change denier who thinks fossil fuels are okay. So they created this total false alternative, which made no sense, because what makes sense with climate impact is to weigh it along with the benefits of fossil fuels. You cannot judge a prescription drug by only looking at negative side effects, and you can't judge fossil fuels by only looking at negative side effects or exaggerating negative side effects. You have to look carefully at our climate impacts, negative and positive, and then weigh them against the benefits that come with fossil fuels, including all the benefits that protect us from climate. So there's this false alternative. So what they did is they owned the morality of caring about our environment, and they owned the claim to science, because the climate change denial thing, so-called, didn't make much sense, because it's pretty obvious we impact climate at least some. But so doing those two things, they owned this issue. So people think, well, if I want to be a good person, if I want a good planet, and I want to be pro-science, then I have to hate fossil fuels. And a lot of what I've tried to do, and I think Michael Schellenberger and Bjorn Lomborg and Steve Koonin, I think what we've tried to do is look at climate in a humanistic, full context way. And we're breaking this false alternative, which is a lot of the reason we get a lot of hostility.
So you said something there that's very psychologically interesting. So you said, if I want to be a good person, because the environmentalists have captured this pro-planet narrative, if I want to be a good person, then I have to buy the human beings are bad for the planet narrative. But I'd like to take that apart a little bit too, because it's not exactly true what you said. The truth of the matter is something like, if I want to take a shortcut to a good person, without having to being a good person, without having to put into the process any real time and effort, so that would mean actually understanding the issues that are associated with environmental management and economic sustainability, which is unbelievably complicated. I mean, Bjorn, well, and you too, Schellenberger, spent their whole lives devoted to that endeavor, trying to wade through the complexities. It's actually really difficult to develop a sophisticated and genuinely moral stance on the environment and the economy. It takes years and years of work. And it's also extremely difficult to be a good person. And merely feeling sorry for the planet does not make you a good person. In fact, what it makes you is a shallow narcissist who's using the easy identification with a genocidal ideology to elevate yourself in the moral hierarchy. And we see people who are peddling this dreadful story to young people and offering them an easy shortcut to something approximating easily trumpeted moral virtue. And that's the sort of moral virtue that you can post on your Facebook page when you claim that, well, you're anti-capitalist and you're in favor of the planet, and therefore all of a sudden you're actually a moral actor and someone to be regarded with admiration. And none of that's true, because it's actually extremely difficult to be a good person.
But it's very powerful. I agree entirely, but it is very powerful. And one thing I talk about in Fossil Future, and this is a big mission of mine, is the moral monopoly of what I call the moral case for eliminating fossil fuels has to be broken. And when you have what I call a moral monopoly, you basically get a halo over your head for saying, I hate fossil fuels, I care about the climate, I care about the planet. You don't need to do anything. You just need to express this sentiment. It doesn't matter. You can fly on private jets. You can live any lifestyle that you want. As long as you say this, you get this halo, and the other side gets devil horns on their head. But part of what's happened with what I call the energy humanists, including me and Bjorn and Michael and Steve, is that we have now shown that actually, quote, saving the planet in their false view is hurting billions of people and dooming them to poverty and actually making our environment worse and hurting biology. And now they hate that. That's why there's such vicious attacks, because their racket is coming to a close. you want it to be a controversial. The first thing before winning a debate is actually creating a debate. There hasn't even been a debate over the morality of fossil fuels until fairly recently. And once the debate is created, that easy claim to virtue will disappear, and those people will just go pick the next easy thing to join.